About a year ago, I made a video on my top 8 free visual novels. Obviously, there are more than 8 visual novels in the world, so I decided to do another list. Since most of these visual novels play the same, I'll be mainly discussing the story and characters. If a visual novel you like isn't on this list, it might be in last year's video, I might not have heard of it, and in some cases, might not even care for it. Anyways, if you're looking for a good way to kill time without having to pay a cent, here are 8 more good free visual novels. Number 8. Syrup and the Ultimate Sweet. Starting off this list is an otome about a candy alchemist named Syrup who one day finds a candy golem in her basement workshop, and it is not known where she came from or who made her. And Syrup isn't happy to see her. I bet YouTube isn't either right now. Better not show this so I can make it advertiser friendly. Well, it's not like it really matters since I don't make money off of YouTube right now anyways. After refusing to eat the candy girl, Syrup's friend Pastel eventually gives the girl a job at the upstairs candy store. Throughout the visual novel, Syrup will travel to different locations trying to figure out who created Gumdrop, what they eventually decided to name the girl. The characters end up getting into crazy and sometimes funny situations because of this, which includes running into Syrup's rival, the witch Butterscotch, and her cat Toffee. Or Syrup could just eat Gumdrop at the beginning and have the story end right there. Number 7. Café Memoria. A fully voice-acted visual novel that is about a restaurant in town that wishes to create memorable experiences for its guests. One weekend, Ryan forgets to buy food the day before and, with nothing to eat for breakfast, considers eating at Café Memoria. The day he goes, he ends up seeing one of his female friends there, Anna, who is very shy and not very confident in herself, which can result in a bit of clumsiness. As Ryan keeps coming back to the restaurant, he keeps seeing other girls that he knows. This includes his childhood friend Michaela, who is somewhat overprotective of him and has a very short temper. The other girls are Tristina, who has a hard time dealing with the opposite gender, Aurelia, who is described as one of the nicest and most attractive girls in the restaurant that happens to be a bit airheaded and lacking in common sense, and lastly, Julia, who's usually very modest and polite. There's not a whole lot to this visual novel, but the different personalities of each character and the level of player interaction can make the player want to come back. For example, you can even order the food that Ryan will eat. Not only that, but you can rate each waitress that serves you. Tristina, you bitch, I'm never eating here again! Number 6. Doki-Doki Literature Club. When it comes to visual novels where you can name the protagonist whatever you want, I've found that most of them aren't very enjoyable for me. Luckily, Doki-Doki Literature Club is an exception. The nameable protagonist is invited by his childhood friend Sayori to join their school's literature club, where he meets the other members, the snide but peppy Natsuki, the shy and timid Yuri, and the perfectionist club president, Monica. In the club, you end up having to write and share poems with the girls in the club, each having different reactions based on the words you choose for your poem. Sometime after getting to know the girls in the club, things in the game start to change and they may or may not surprise you. However, it's nothing that hasn't been done before. Despite that, Doki-Doki Literature Club still managed to make it entertaining and executes it all very well. Number 5. Memo. A male transfer student named Seiji has moved several times a year for most of his life, finally returns to the town where he used to live. After he moves in, he starts attending school where he meets a few interesting characters. There's Elizabeth, who's a bitch, and her friend Kazumi, who is actually tolerable and more pleasant to be around, and Kosuke, a guy that is obsessed with both of them. Anyways, as the days go by, Seiji keeps having dreams about his past which involved a childhood friend of his. Depending on which of the few routes in the game you're on, you may or may not end up getting the full story. For example, you can get to some of the endings without even finding out who his childhood friend is. Even so, I still enjoyed my time spent on this one. Number 4. Red String of Fate. I don't play a lot of visual novels with fantasy elements, but this one was too good for me not to include. For those not familiar, Red String of Fate is based on an Eastern Asian belief that originates from Chinese legend. According to this legend, people have red strings that cannot be seen, which connect them to their destined lovers, regardless of place, time, or circumstances. In this visual novel, the main character Valerie actually has the ability to see these red strings. However, there's a catch. She doesn't have a red string of her own. But that doesn't stop her from trying to find her soulmate anyway, believing that whoever it is on the opposite side of the earth. After starting her first year in university, Valerie struggles to balance her studies and multiple part-time jobs she has to save up money for her travels to search for her soulmate. While in school, she ends up befriending a couple of guys, one of which she knew in high school. His name is Aaron, and he's really into video games, whenever he's not studying. He also has a habit of falling for nearly every girl he sees. The other guy's name is Luke. He's a bit introverted and is really into literature. Luke is also a bit negative towards romance, and that's because, like Valerie, he can see the red strings, but does not have one of his own. Anyway, although Valerie may be determined to travel to the other end of the planet to find her soulmate, she might not actually have to do that. Because, there are a couple guys right here that she could go for. Number 3. Planets. Marin, a once normal girl, one day fell down the stairs at her school, resulting in a concussion. When she finally woke up in the nurse's room, something interesting happened. Suddenly, she was able to hear the thoughts of everyone around her. It isn't too much longer before she meets a mysterious guy who takes her to a place with others like her, people with different kinds of interesting abilities. She then starts her life at Planets, a school for students with supernatural abilities. At Planets, she meets a few interesting guys. One of the guys, Caius, who happens to be the one that brought her to Planets, doesn't really want anything to do with her. In fact, he doesn't really want anything to do with anyone and tries to push everyone away from him. Not only that, but he's the principal's son, which has a majority of the students afraid of him. Whether or not Marin ends up getting close to Caius, she spends most of her time with a couple other guys, Lucan and Ryu. Lucan happens to be a very shy person, but that doesn't stop him from being surrounded by girls whenever they see him, which includes Marin's roommate, Ruiko, who's also very gullible. The last of the guys at the school is Ryu, who is a slacker that often skips class. He also has a habit of flirting a lot. All 4 of these characters I mentioned previously obviously have their own ability. Caius can release a lot of energy that can cause a lot of damage, Lucan has telekinesis, Ryu can teleport, and Ruiko can walk through walls and stuff. However, these aren't the only major characters. There's also Marin's best friend, Haruhi, who happens to be a guy that dresses like a girl. To be honest, I really thought he was a girl when I first played this, until his gender was made clear. The visual novel's cast of characters and all the crazy things that happen help make it very interesting. The most impressive part is this game was made by just one person. There was even going to be a sequel at one point, but it was cancelled. The creator of this visual novel went on to creating another project, but hasn't announced anything in a while. In fact, there doesn't seem to be anything from her in the last couple of years from what I've seen. Number 2, Sounds of Her Love. Another visual novel where you can name the protagonist. In this visual novel, you play as a male student and you start your new life after transferring into an international school. What's disappointing is that it feels the same as any other year in school. However, things would change one day after meeting a girl named Carrie Dwyn, or Carrie for short. After picking up a library card that she dropped and giving it to her, you start sitting with her in the cafeteria, and before you know it, your relationship with her continues to grow and you learn more about each other. After some time, you get to spend some time at her house and learn about how unfortunate her family life is. One of the things that makes this visual novel a bit different, aside from being able to name the character you play as, is that Carrie is the only character that actually has sprites. Other characters, like your family, her family, or other classmates, don't even have names of their own, but it's not really a problem with how Carrie is the main focus of the game. What did bother me though was how short this visual novel was. There are only 3 endings and one of them left me heartbroken. By the protagonist. However, no game has ever hurt me as much as the next one I'm going to talk about. Number 1. Homeward. Out of all the visual novels I've played, this one hurt me the most. This visual novel is about a guy named Riku who, for as long as he could remember, has been moved around a lot because of his father's job, so he never really fit in anywhere. Eventually, he's able to return to where he spent the most time in his childhood, where he is reunited with his childhood friend Nonami and his younger sister Sora, who he never really knew before. He even makes a new friend named Haruka while there. Throughout his days in school, Riku struggles with his loneliness and his difficulty becoming truly attached to anyone. There are 3 routes in this visual novel. You can choose to go for Nonami, Haruka, and even Sora. Oh, so it's one of those games. Yep, there's an incest route in this game. As uncomfortable as that made me feel, I still enjoyed this visual novel all the way through. Out of all the visual novels I've ever played, I can relate to this one the most. Riku's loneliness and not really being able to connect with anyone, for example. The game kept bringing this up, which only increased my pain. And back when I played this, I made so many tweets because of this, and even other people were affected by the tweets I made. Because of the circumstances surrounding the characters in the game, things could get a little crazier or even darker than they would in my life. The game even has adult content, and unlike Katawa Shoujo, a game I've talked about before, they don't feel as out of place. However, you can't turn sex scenes off like you could in Katawa Shoujo. If you don't want to see the sex scenes, there is an all ages version, which is really more of a 13+ version. However, there are a couple of reasons I'd say you shouldn't play the all ages version. First off, there's only one route. Nanamis. Not only that, but in this form, it's a kinetic visual novel, meaning that you can't make any choices. Kinetic visual novels aren't my thing because I don't feel like I'm actually contributing to the story like I would in a visual novel where I actually get to make choices. Until I played this, I had never been hurt so much by a visual novel. Even so, I'd still say it's worth playing. That's all of the visual novels I wanted to talk about. Like I said earlier, these all play the same, only a few visual novels like Café Memoria and Doki-Doki Literature Club actually try to do anything different with the gameplay. Anyways, all of them are really enjoyable and you definitely should check them out. And this time, only one of them has adult content. But as I said earlier, there is an option to avoid that if you don't want to see it. Anyways, thanks for watching this video about free visual novels. If you're not subscribed already, why not do that? You can also comment on my stuff and all that. And I'm about to show some more videos by me you can click on if you want. Have a good day and goodbye.